Isn't it something that a guy like me had to go through what I had to go through, and God opened that door and I never walked through it? Because my pain and my addiction was more comfortable, and it's all I knew. And God would continue to come back and visit me throughout the years of my addiction and open that door of that cell that I was in. And sometimes it was an actual cell. Sometimes it was in a dope house. Sometimes it was in a street. Sometimes it was in places that I never said I would go or even return to. And that door was open, but because that's all I knew was the hell I was living in. All I knew, as Nate's sister said, the giants that have stood and looked me in the eye my whole life since childhood, long before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. And God had opened that door, and on many occasions, I declined the offer. I really had to get to the bottom of that answer, because in my heart, I wanted to get free. In my heart, I wanted to stop doing the dope. In my heart, I wanted to stop causing chaos and pain for my children and my wife at the time, and my parents and my family and my loved ones and my employers and the judges and the POs, and my word was nothing. And that door would continuously open time and time again, but I was more comfortable in chaos than I could ever possibly think to be in freedom. Because in freedom, I didn't know what freedom looked like. Even though I would come to meetings like this and I would see people that were free, but because I was incarcerated in between my two ears, I thought you were faking it. So guys like Eric would get a medallion, I'd say, oh yeah, really? He's really been sober a year? And the reason I would say that is because I wasn't sober. Because those who judge and investigate feel judged and investigated. And the bottom line is this, that door would open time and time again, and God would continuously send me help. And I said that with understanding last week very aggressively. I said, well, you know, a guy like me doesn't understand why I need to come to a place like this to begin to talk about my feelings, the things that I'd rather not talk about, and different things. And I got really confused when when I went to all those different treatment centers, 11 to be in fact, and they would teach me how to feel because I was numb. I was numb even sober. I was numb sober. I was afraid to feel. But they taught me how to feel. The psychiatrists, the psychologists, the therapists, they all played a part in teaching me how to feel. But then when I got out, I had to live on faith. Because faith is not a feeling. And serving and following God and working the steps is principle. If you are still rolling on a feeling in new recovery, that feeling will end and the work will start. Because it's easy to do good when you feel good. It's easy to show up when you want to show up. But the bottom line is this, that video resonated with me because that was me. And unfortunately, that's you too. That we become more comfortable in the pain because we know it. We've lived it. It was in us before we used. And we believe the lie that the drug or alcohol or sex or gambling would appease the pain. Yes, it did for a moment, but it really accelerated it. Because now we began to do things that were done to us. Feel things that we felt, and we imposed those and projected those on other people. So the guilt and shame of becoming somebody that we never said we would be, it kept us incarcerated. And then we believed the lies that we're has-beens and we're losers and we're terrible people. But I'm here to tell you tonight that just because you made some mistakes doesn't mean you are one. Just because you have failed like I did, and I was successful at it, doesn't mean I'm a failure. And that's why I had to begin to walk out my purpose. If you do not know why you were created, as I've said week after week, where purpose is unknown, abuse is inevitable. Some of you had seen the movie years ago, Shawshank Redemption. And I believe, if my memory serves me correct, when Morgan Freeman got out, he'd rather stay. Because that's all he knew. And it blessed my heart that he faced his fears at the end of the movie. Not to ruin it if you haven't seen it, but it's so old you probably can't get it. But to me, we become comfortable, and if we don't know our purpose, we're going to abuse ourselves. And that's why I had to work the steps, get a sponsor, be honest and transparent. So Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I thank you for the people that are under my sound of my voice that dared to physically walk out of that cell, but they're still mentally there. So, Lord, work with them tonight. Work with me tonight. Do something. Make sure that I leave differently than I came. Open our eyes and soften our hearts and open our minds and create a spirit of willingness to learn things that we possibly have rejected in the past. Have your way in a quick manner here tonight. In your name we pray, amen. So we're trying to find our purpose in the definition on the sheets that you've been provided. And I feel good about that because I print about 300 of them. I don't know how many meetings you go to where you get a sheet and you can follow along. That tells you we care about you. That tells you that, so once in a while when I see a piece of paper that I printed for you in the garbage can, I also see your life in the garbage can. Because if you don't value that paper, I don't think you value your life, but you still think you're tough. You know how I roll in this place. This isn't kindergarten. You want to become a man or a woman, you got to be talked to as that. It's not rejection. It's somebody loving you enough to tell you the truth. So the definition of purpose says to be set up. So you walked in these doors, you got the same opportunity that Eric and Nate and myself, Pastor Jed, Blake, everyone had the same opportunity. Same playing field. It doesn't matter how you grew up, what you had, what you didn't have, how you felt, you didn't feel. God is the same God. So this is available, and you have been set up by being in a meeting or here for success. It says for something to be attained. I'm tired of losing. I know how to lose it and get it, lose it and get it, but I never know how to keep it until I got and stayed in these rooms. I knew how to get sober, I just didn't know how to stay sober. It's going to take more power to stay sober than it did to get you sober. So it goes on to say, the reason why something is done. If we're going to be on purpose, I was talking to somebody today, you don't have to be intentional to worry. When have you ever sought out to worry? It just happens on its own. You don't have to be intentional to be angry or resentful. It just happens. But you do have to be intentional on purpose to be positive. It goes on to say a feeling of being determined. Eventually that feeling of being determined to get and stay sober will dissipate. And when that happens is when the journey starts. Like I said to Nate, I've appreciated the mountaintops. We've had plenty of them. But it's when you and I have been in those valleys, when we didn't know where to go from there, is when we really learned about God. So the feeling about being determined to aim at a goal will dissipate. The first week we talked about position. You have to settle the score. Do you want to be sober or not? If you're still trying to figure that out, you're going to get high. And that comes down to the first step. And it says, you arranging, if you take your position, that God has arranged for you to be here. You may not want to be here, but you better remind yourself there's a lot worse places you could be. One being the county jail, the next being the state or federal prison, and the third thing being the grave. So since you're here, open your mind and become willing to what is being laid down. This is not opinions. This is not theories. This is truth. And it's the truth that will set you free. So God has arranged for you to be here. It talks about in the definition of position, order. You have to learn order. It goes on to say where something is located. When you're sober, you shouldn't be missing an action. Somebody shouldn't be looking at their watch wondering where you are. If they have to wonder where you are, you're in a place that you shouldn't be. So when you get sober, you take your position where you're located. And now it says a point of view on your sheets. You have to change the way you think. Have you ever thought about what you're thinking about? The second week, we talked about exposure. The newcomer's the most important person in the meeting. Everybody's a nice guy. Somebody will be nice when they need something from you, when they want something from you. But eventually, the true you and me is going to get exposed. There's a side of us that isn't nice. There's a downright nasty, grimy, dirty, stinky, stanky side of each and every one of us. And if you stick around these rooms long enough, we're going to see that in you. But we will still love you. And you may see that in me. So you have to be exposed. The third week we talked about routine. If you're going to be sober, you got to follow a routine. It's the program, not your program or my program. It's the way, not your way or my way. And we have to learn that we have to follow God. It's a fixed program. It's an established procedure. It has to be regularly followed. It's got sequence to it. The fourth week we talked about power. What's going to be the effect of your program? I met with an individual earlier today. They shared with me that they've never done an 8th or a 9th step, so they didn't feel that they've experienced the promises of the program. I said, what's holding you back? And we began to talk about it. But the bottom line is this, that if you are going to need the power of God in step 3, when you made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of Him, you're going to have to tap into His power to stick to your routine. Some of us need the power, all of us need the power of God just not to lie and take shortcuts and manipulate. So we talked about the power of God in the 4th week. The 5th week we talked about the devil. Some of you may call that the addict. Don't for a minute think that the addict is out in the parking lot doing push-ups waiting for you. The addict is inside of your head right now, right now. Think about what you're thinking about while I'm talking to you. Analyze what you're thinking. I mean, if we could hear what you're thinking right now, what would this room sound like? And what would be the rating on that movie? See, we got to understand that you have to, if you have an enemy, you better know the tactics of the enemy. Last week we talked about understanding. If you have taken your position, if you've exposed your weaknesses and became authentic, if you have developed a routine, if you have tapped into the power of God, you know how you tap into the power of God? I'm entirely ready to have God, in His power, remove my defects of character. I humbly ask God to remove my shortcomings. That's tapping into His power. So you're going to need that, but you're going to have a different level of understanding. If you actually do what's being taught, you're going to understand that this really does work. And the definition of understanding on your sheet says a mental grasp. You may not be able to grasp it like Blake shared. He couldn't grasp why he had to financially give. I had to giggle to myself. Did you ever argue with yourself about giving money to the dope man? Here, have the whole check, and I'm going to go steal some from my parents to give you some more. But when it comes to giving to feed my starving children, check yourself. And that's why God has blessed Blake, because he continues to do that. And so we have a different level of understanding. And the level of understanding definition on your sheet says that you become interested in the particulars, that you actually do care about other people's feelings, that you actually will begin to forgive them and forgive yourself. And this week I want to talk to you about being sanctified, which is a religious term, but in normal terms it means being set apart. Because if you have taken your position, developed a routine, exposed your weaknesses, not just say you're all good, I'm so grateful to be sober. If you're getting downright honest in group and saying this ain't easy, I feel like using, I feel like cussing you out, and I feel like running out these doors, now we're getting somewhere. Not praise God, thank God I'm above ground all the time. You're not going to feel like that all the time. You're going to want to kill somebody. I mean, I often talk about using or whatever else, and somebody says, well, I get nervous when you talk about that. I said, trust me, if I'm going to use, I ain't going to talk about it. You ain't going to know I'm going to use. You'll hear that I went and used. See, you got to start talking, and you develop your routine, and being sanctified is by doing all the things that have been taught in the last 7 weeks, you have set yourself apart. And what it says as a definition of sanctified is to be set apart for a sacred purpose. God saved you for a reason. And that reason is to help other people. And if you don't do that, it probably won't work. It says for religious, to state of growing in divine grace. Like Nate said, God hasn't even gotten started with him. A state of being in divine grace. It goes on to say, after you made your decision in your 3rd step, then that's when God takes over. But before you made that decision in your 3rd step, you had to come to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. But it goes on to say this now, something that is set apart for a special use. I set myself apart for a special use, and that special use was for me to smoke crack. Dope set me apart from my family. Dope set me apart from my dreams. Dope set me apart from my finances. Dope set me apart from my children, but I had to make that decision. The dope didn't make the decision for me because I made a decision to do the dope. So if we have tools like this, Yes, once I start using, things are on, but in the same breath, I have the tools that I have to choose to use. So it goes on to say now in John 17, you are set apart by studying the Word. That when you work the steps, when you study the Word of God, if you work them, they begin to work you. I'm not a reader. You know my story. I'm not academically strong. I got high levels of ADD. But I call that an asset today. I'm able to multitask in multiple business at multiple times with multiple people. Like I've given 19 messages in the month of October in 24 days. How can I do that? Well, I learned how to multitask on the streets. So it goes on to say, my prayer is not to take them out of the world. Too many of us, now that we're sober, we want our consequences of our addiction to leave. You're going to have to walk through why don't they trust me now? I've been sober 30 days. Trust is earned. And what it goes on to say, they are not of the world. God is not of the world. Jesus is not of the world. So sometimes you got to remove yourself from the emotional bondage of your own problems. Now check out what it says now in Matthew 16. You set yourself apart by denying yourself. If you're going to work a program, you got to realize that it isn't about you. For 14 years, Eric Brew got his 5-year medallion. Eric Norcott cut into it tonight. My daughter's here tonight. If my daughter would have been here last week, she would have heard, thank you to the Hill children for allowing their parents to serve and teach drug addicts for 14 years. They pay a price. She paid a price for my addiction. She's also paying a price for my recovery. One price has got a reward tied to it. One price has got death tied to it. Either way, you're going to pay a price. So you have to choose what price you'll pay. Either way, there's going to be pain, so you have to deny yourself. But check this out. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it. I lost my life in service, and that's where I found it, in these rooms. Too many of us are going to try to find ourselves from all these different things. God is saying, deny yourself and serve me. It says, what good for it for be someone to gain the whole world? What good for it would be for you to get your finances in order, go get your own place to live, get your car back, and get some money in the bank account just to smoke it up again? What good would that be? And that's what the scripture's saying. Too many of us are trying to build our outside worlds when our inside worlds are dying. And I'll be happy when or if, when I get that cash, when I get that girl, when I get my car on, when I get my apartment on. You get all that because you're talented. But what good is it? You just got your car back that you're going to lose because you weren't focusing on God. You didn't deny yourself, you did it all for yourself. And by doing it for yourself, everything you just built went in the pipe. And once everything you built goes in the pipe, you start to steal and manipulate. And then consequences come, and they're already there. So what good is it for you to get everything back what you lost just to lose it again? I think that's more painful than denying yourself. Because if I do it the right way, God's going to give it to me, and if God gives it to me, it's permanent. I'm walking in some permanent things today. I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. Blake's walking in some permanent things today. And it goes on to say that God will reward you for what, more or less, what you've done. I mean, quit looking for a reward from things that you can lose. Get a reward. Now, check this out. So you have to set yourself apart from people. It says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. So you're sober and you're still hanging out with a bunch of thugs in the house. I'm talking about the sober house. Temporary guys that won't be here next week. And they can do nothing for you. They don't got a you-know-what in. But they're your new road dogs in sobriety. When all of it goes down, you will call them and their cell phone will be off unless it's a government phone. How many of your road dogs are with you now? So why attach yourself to a road dog in a sober house is a temporary resident? Can I come real with it? So now the dope's gone, but I'm still hanging around bad company. And it corrupts good character. And I'm being misled because I like my cell. I'm more comfortable with lack of character. I'm more comfortable with those who complain about their circumstances. I'm more comfortable with the people that complain about Pastor Jeff. I'm more comfortable about complaining about my living circumstances when I just crawled out of a dumpster. It's that video all over again. And we should be smart enough to know if we're hanging around, it's not that anybody's a bad person, but I've been that bad company. And when it all rolled downhill, none of us were anything to anyone. Quite frankly, in the game that's going on in the street now, no one's got your back. The bottom line is this, and check this out, James 1:4. You set yourself apart by what you're focused on. So what's got your focus? It says, but when each person is tempted, when they are dragged away for their own evil desire. If I was to bring a gambling chip in here right now, Tom Hatch would break out in sweats. I'd go like this with it. I don't desire that. But if Tom Hatch was to bring a crack pipe in here, I would break out in sweats. So everybody's got different desires. And what I've learned is this. I don't know how many of you went through New Beginnings. But back in the day, and maybe it's even to this day, New Beginnings used to have a program where you actually went through the routine of using dope. So there I was, burning some you-know-what and loading up a fake crack rock, and then I lit it. And my counselor says, you can exhale, it's fake. Cunning, baffling, and powerful. See, so we have to learn how to talk about our desires that are dragging us away and what is enticing us. I got many men in my group that say, I'm thinking about leaving, I'm thinking about leaving. And most likely they won't leave because they're talking about thinking about leaving. But it's the guys that leave without even saying anything that have been thinking about leaving that you read about in the newspaper. That call us later on. Who knows what you're thinking about? Who knows what your desires, your evil desires? We all got them. Who knows what you're being enticed with? Check this out, John 17. You set yourself apart by carrying the message. It says, for they sanctify, I'm going to sanctify myself. Sanctify means setting yourself apart. You had to set yourself apart from the dope. One of the definitions of being positioned is that you will be put somewhere. Due to the fact that you couldn't separate yourself from the dope, God had to put you in jail. And even in jail, we know that stuff goes down. But my point is this, that you have to do it. That there have been pioneers for years that have paved the way that will sponsor guys like you and I, that will spend time to teach us and go forward because they're smart enough to know that they cannot keep what they have unless they give it away. And if they give it away long enough, it'll become part of their lifestyle and they just cannot stop but giving it away. It's part of their DNA to give it away. I learned this about 8 years ago from a guy. He was a taker. He said he took and he took and he took from everybody until he had nothing left. That makes no sense. I thought if you were taking something from somebody, you'd have something. But if you take and you take and you take and you steal and you lie and you take from people's time, you know how many people have taken my time in 14 years here? I said it last week. I said it on Sunday. Man, I'm just going to keep doing it. Because I do have guys like Greg here. I have guys that are grateful. And Janice came to me today, showed me 3 or 4 years of teachings that she saved that haven't ended in the garbage can. With notes and highlighters and all these different things. So for every 20 that don't take advantage of it, there's one. But in this community, it's probably 20 to 1 that are taking advantage of it. And for the one that isn't ready, we love you. You're just not ready. I wasn't ready either. That's why I had to go to treatment 11 times. I just thank God I'm alive. So it goes on to say this, that what kind of message are you carrying? Who can get sober working your program? So the benefits of purpose say this in Exodus, God saved you on purpose for a purpose. But I have spared you for a purpose. If you think that you spared you You maybe didn't do dope like I did. Like Eric's parents said, overdoses, multiple hospital visits. And thank God for the doctors, but God is the healer. Because the best doctors in the world could have got him back to life, but they couldn't have healed his heart. It's the healing of the heart that makes you not go back out there again. And what I've learned is this, that I had to set myself apart. I had to walk out of the dope house. I had to come here. I have to study. I had to ask a sponsor. I have to study for 14 years. I have to do this. And once God sees me doing it, he helps me with it. And what it says here is that you were saved and you were spared for a purpose. That should say your value. It goes on to say to show my power, that God wants to show his power in you. But if you don't use his power to spread his name, just like the wealth that you saw here tonight, financial wealth. The financial wealth was used to benefit somebody else. If you're going to use your financial wealth just to benefit you, it won't last. Because you forgot that you've been spared. You forgot that you spent all your money on dope. You forgot that you stole money from people that you love to buy more dope. You forgot all the things that I used to forget, and I forgot that God spared my life. And the reason why I went back out there, because I didn't think my life was worth sparing. Because I became more comfortable in the cell, and I wasn't so sure about you. But I began to take a chance on an individual that was teaching like I'm teaching tonight. I said, well, what if he's telling the truth? It's just like being a Christian and my friend at Super America who's an atheist. Every time I used to go in there, he'd call me Jesus. I said, that's a high compliment, brother, thank you. But I ain't Jesus. I love him with all my heart. He's a genuine, soft, incredible man. But the discussion I had from him that one night, I think, changed his perspective. I said, okay, man, you're gifted, man. You got a heart of compassion. I said, but let me ask you one question about your lack of belief. If I'm wrong, I'm just wrong about God. But if you're wrong, there's eternal consequences. What about what I'm laying down to you right now? And you don't believe it. What's the worst that can happen to you if you give it a chance and you don't believe it? But what would happen to you if you reject it? The same thing that happened to you before you got here. I got parents under the sound of my voice with kids in their early 20s that will be dead in the next 4 years if they don't get this under control. I got parents right there, stand up, that have a daughter that died that I do. Let's give them a hand. I told them when I did their funeral for her daughter, I said, I will talk about her for the rest of my life. See, we have to understand that this is serious and this is nothing to play around with. It says in Proverbs 1, God will send you people to teach you purpose. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline. You cannot claim to have wisdom without discipline. To help them understand the insights of the wise. How did you stay sober for 3 years through all these ups and downs? How did you stay sober when that was going on with your family? How are you still a resident of Serenity Village when you're doing good fiscally and you could have moved out by now? How do you work? Dewey, how do you, after 5 years of being sober, being extremely successful in your business, stay up and do the praise and worship 3-4 times a week and record salesman? Why are you still in the houses, Dewey? You can go get your own house. Why don't you ask him? Don't ask the guy who's trying to get the hell out of there. But that's what we do, because bad company corrupts good character. Pardon my language. But that's what we typically gravitate to. And it says in 1 Timothy here, the purpose of other people will birth your purpose. The purpose of my instruction is that all believers will be filled with love. That comes from a pure heart. That's what happens in our groups. A clear conscience. Talk about that you're feeling bitter and resentful, and genuine faith. I mean, the people that make this work stay genuine. They're authentic. They're real. They're a basket case just like me. But if you become and you start to walk out your purpose and you work a program, Romans 8:28 will begin to happen in your life. In Romans 8:28, it says that God causes all things to work together for the good. Eric Norcott should be dead, but Eric Norcott is not dead. He is serving God in this church. He is a top professional in a company that I work with him at. He is a high-level servant in this church. And God said this to Eric a year ago. Learn to love me, and I'm going to give you your purpose. You know what? This whole row of his family would have been sitting over his gravesite. And God, over the last year, has worked every bad thing into good. God started this program because of a crack addiction. God started a church because of a crack addiction. God works all things together for the good, and the criteria and conditions of those things happening in your life, if you learn how to love God, and God loves you, and you walk out your purpose, you start to learn and take your position, develop a routine, expose your weaknesses, tap into the power of God, get a level of understanding, know what the devil is trying to kill, steal, and destroy your life. And I'll close with this, Ephesians 6. God will send you to birth purpose in other people. You have no clue what Eric did for my wife in Haiti. And my wife's been doing this a long time. You have no clue that I would let another man into my house at 1 a.m. when I'm out of town with my wife, especially a junkie like him. There's trust. There's honor. There's integrity. I would let you into anything in my life. I would give you all access codes to all banks, anything. That's who you are, an ex-drug addict. When you turn the corner to go try to help somebody else find their purpose because you have yours, nothing can stop you. Not a hater, not a financial institution, not some unhappy resident. I mean, and I want to close with this because I taught it on Sunday, that, when people come to me with complaints and attitudes, I don't take it personal. I've been doing this for 14 years. I know your problem has nothing to do with me, and I know what you're saying to me you've said to people your whole life, and I'm just a different face. I know wherever you go, there you are. And I know I love you. And if you're willing to become transparent and get honest about how bad you're hurting, not walking around like somebody else's watch on, wondering when you're getting out of here. God bless you. I love you.